So a number of weeks ago, I did a wet fly called the Martin, and I had a number of people reach out to me with some questions about working with duck quill. The Martin has a matched and married tail to it, and I just released a video a couple days ago on the Trout Fin, which has a married and matched wing. So I thought I'd just go ahead and do a supplemental video just talking about the duck quill a little bit more. It's not hard to work with if you've got the right feathers and good feathers. At the same time, there are some things that you can do to select your feathers, to process your feathers and work with them that makes it a little bit easier to get the process of marrying slips together to make matched wings. So this video's got basically 3 different objectives to it. I'm going to talk to you about selecting your duck quills and then matching those up. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about what to look for and how to organize those. Then processing the duck quills in such a way that it makes it easy for you to go ahead and get slips off of them. And then lastly, it's going to show you how I go my process of making matched wings as well as marrying slips together to make matched and married wings. So for the first part, you're going to get your duck quills when you order them or purchase them in the shop, generally in a package like this. They generally come to about 4 in a package, as these have. Nature Spirit is a good company. They have some very good ones. Vineyards is very good as well. I've gotten them from Wapsie and Hairline, and they're pretty good. None of them sponsor this video or anything like that. This is just my take on them. But the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to open up each of the packages of your colors. So I have 3 different packages here. And you want to match these up out of the packages. So, and it just depends on which way you want to look at this. I look at this when I lay it down this way and it curves like that. I've got a left wing. And then when I lay this one down here next to it and it curves the other way, I have a right feather, I should say, not wing. So what I'm looking for here is to match these up as best I can in size and shape. Now, as you can see with this group right here, try and lay these all flat for you so you can see them. I have 3 of them here that are pretty close to the same size and shape, but I have one over here that is not. It's like Sesame Street. One of these things is not like the other. The one under my middle finger on my left hand is longer, as well as the barbs are a little bit longer. So this is what you run into, is that you don't always have 2 pairs of well-matched feathers. So what we're going to do is look at these in terms of how can I match these up. And this is why I have 3 packages out, because 2 things to consider. 3 things actually. You have your feathers you get in that package. All of them aren't going to match up that well. Your colors could be off a little bit. These are probably 2 different dye lots. These are about out of the same. These are a little darker. So you have to consider that. And then as well as, which I'll talk a little bit more about, you have to consider the condition of the feather. As you can see with this one, I've got some holes and some broken barbs right in here. So these are all the things you have to look at. And I'll elaborate on that a little bit more. So initially what I'm going to do is I'm just going to look at these. Those 2 are pretty much the same shape and length, so I'm going to match those 2 up. And I'm going to set those aside for right now. I'm going to leave this one out because it's a little bit longer, and this one's a little shorter. Now these, we're in the same boat, but I've got a little bit different colors. See, now that the lengths on them are 2 different ones. In matching these up, none of these actually match up all that great. Primarily what you're using when these are selected, you're using a primary flight feather or possibly a secondary flight feather. Those are going to get you the longest feather and generally the widest, I should say the longest barbs. This is also part of the reason when I purchase these, I usually get a half a dozen packages to 10 packages at a time. It's a little bit more expensive, but for what I'm looking for, I have more options. If I lay these all out, as you can see, I have these two match up a little bit better. So I'll set those over there. And then those are darker, two different darker colors right here, which you could potentially use, but it depends on what your purpose is for the fly, which I'll talk about in just a second. But actually these are much longer, which that's nice, but those don't really match up that well. However, these two match up pretty well. So I've got three nice matches here. You could match these up and use them. As you can see, the barbs here on the left feather are longer than these on the right. So that would probably not be a very good match. You could potentially put those over. But these two, if you needed to, you could match those. I'm going to put those up there. And then I've got these two feathers, which don't really match up too well. You could work with those. So that leads me into the next topic, which is it depends on what you're wanting to accomplish with the fly itself and the feathers. If you're tying these to go fishing with, I wouldn't be so concerned about, the exact same colors matching. I wouldn't be concerned if your wing had, some holes in it. Where I had that one. So if you made a wing and one side of it had some of these broken barbs or holes in it, I wouldn't be concerned about that for fishing purposes. Obviously, if you're going to tie these to give away or to frame for a show, who knows what, you're going to want to select the best feathers that you can. So again, that's why I buy these in groups of 6 to 10 or a dozen at a time. So these three are the ones that I got the best matches out of. And these two right here are in pretty good shape. There's not a lot of tears in them or anything like that. I would set these two aside as more or less for show flies. These aren't too bad either. This has got a little bit of a tear in it. It's got some holes and thin spots right there. This one is a little bit better. It's got a few thin spots here, but you can work around those and just not use those in your flies. So I might put these two aside also. No, now that I think about it, I wouldn't, because if you look at this one, there's some tears down in here. You've got some sections you could maybe use, but out of all of this, I have basically one pair that I would use for the purposes of doing really, really nice wet flies that I'm going to frame or show. Keep that in mind. I would set these in a separate package or container for quality feathers. All of these would go into another container basically for fishing flies. And, even if you're going to tie them and you're going to give them to, a friend or something like that to go fishing with, then by all means, use some of these same feathers. That talks about, the feathers themselves, sorting those, what you're looking for in the feathers. The primary feathers and then some of the secondary feathers will be kind of wide. Another thing to consider is the size of flies you're going to tie. The feather right here is comprised of basically three different parts. You've got the rachis, which is the stem. Then you have these pieces coming off the rachis that are called barbs. On each of those barbs are little hooks on the top and the bottom that go in opposite directions think of it as kind of like Velcro. And what the hooks do, they're called barbules. What they do is they keep the feather solid. These are flight feathers. So if these barbs didn't stay together and the air went through, the birds would get no lift. This is what allows us, when you have these separated like this, you can stroke these back together and they zip right back up. And that's what allows us to make a married wing of different colors of green and black and white, whatnot, is those barbules. The thing is, the barb has also two different sections to it on these particular feathers. You can see there's a section right here just by the rachis and out a little bit. This is a little bit thicker and it's stiffer. And I'm not certain if there's an actual term for this particular portion of the barb. If there is, please let me know in the comments. But what you're looking for in your matched and married wings are the softer, thinner sections of the barb out this way. So this comes into play when you're considering the size of the flies that you're tying. For a size 6 and a size 4, you're going to be taking sections down here. On a lot of these feathers, you're only going to get so far up. So as you can see with this one right here, I'd have a few for some 4s and 6s. But once I get up here, they're getting shorter and shorter. And these may be some 10s and 12s, 14s, because you're going to have a whole lot of this right here, this thicker section that's just makes the fly bulkier. I'll talk about that in a little bit. So that's something to consider. Now, when processing the flies, what I like to do, you can do different things. I like to basically just peel off the fluff down at the bottom. And I know that I'm not going to be using any of these and probably all the way up to where they get consistently the same length. So probably right about here, maybe actually a little further up, right about here, I'm not going to really use any of these. You could if you wanted to. I don't think it would hurt if you wanted to throw that into a fly, but I'm just going to peel those off. And this is how I actually prep the feathers and get them ready for me to actually use in tying some flies. I'm going to do the same thing on the left one. Just get this stuff out of the way. Now my feathers are more or less prepped. There is another step you could do. As you can see, I've got some pieces that the barbs are folded a little bit. They overlap here. Sometimes you get them where they're actually folded over, even kind of twisted around. You can get some of these out. You can either steam the feather, get a pot boiling and some steam coming off. You can steam those, and when they're warm and damp, just stroke those out, and those will come back to life. Steaming will also help all the barbs and barbules kind of realign themselves and be a little bit fuller. So if I were tying some show flies that were very important, I would probably go ahead and make certain that I steam this first. You can also get an iron with some steam on a low heat, just warm enough to get it warm and the steam, and you can iron these. So you can flatten some of these out if they have some waves or something like that in them, but the heat and the moisture kind of help those to realign. So I've got them sorted. I've got these prepped that I'm going to use. Now what I do, and this is a little trick from in the video I did on the Trout Fin, I mentioned Don Bastian's DVD on tying classic wet flies. It's an older DVD, and I think that the DVD is actually made from a VHS tape. Quality isn't the best in the world, at least in terms of what we're used to these days, but it certainly is good enough. But he mentions this little trick in it that I think a student showed him how to do this. I may be wrong there. Anyway, a lot of people will have their two feathers sitting on the table like this, and they'll pick them up one at a time, and they'll cut their slips out like this, and they'll take one off, set it on the table, take the other off, and then try to match them up. And it gets, the more you're handling these in your hands on the table and off the table, the more likely you are to tear them up, to mess them up, and then they're maybe unusable. An easier way, and this is the trick that, like I said, he mentions in the video, is to take your left and rights, put them together like this, get the bare stems together like this, and then just tape them together. A little Scotch tape right around the bottom, just wraps those together. So now you've got them all set. You've got your left and your right. You've got your shiny side here. You got your dull side here. You've got the portions that you're going to use on both sides all set. This makes it very, very easy to come in with your scissors. You're going to cut a slip about like this. They're usually about the gap of the hook, but you're going to cut a little bit on each side like that. Then when you go to match these up, and these are just matched wings, they're the same color, but you're just matching a left and a right. What you're going to do is you're going to just peel that off, flip this right over. You're going to match the tips up like this, and then you're going to match those tips, pinch down, peel that right off. Now you have your matched wings all set. And in this case, I matched the two shiny sides together so they flare out that way. If you want them to lay flat, you would do it the opposite way and you would match the two dull sides. But now you have it all set. You'll notice that, I think you can notice that I have this one here is a little wider than the other one, so you can reach in with your bodkin and just cull that one out, and now you have both of your slips the same width, and you're all set to lay that on top of your hook and tie that in. So that's the easiest way to match up some duck to, and you can do goose or even turkey flight feathers. Same way. You can process them the same and do the same thing, but that's the easiest way to match them up. Next, I want to show you how I process or how I go about making married slips for married and matched wings. The trout fin that I did a video on just a few days ago, the wing has an orange, black, and white in the wing. Problem is here with this white background, this white's not going to show up that well. So I'm going to go ahead and use this green feather that we just processed simply because you'll be able to see it a little bit better. Now, the important thing here is that I have, in this particular wing, the recipe calls for 2 barbs of black, topped by 4 barbs of the white, or in this case green, and then the rest of it is going to be the orange. So because I have my feathers taped together like this, it's very easy for me to come in and just cut out 2 barbs of the black. I might cut 3. If I do, that's fine, and I'll explain in just a second. I'm going to cut 4 out of the green. It's more important that you cut a little bit more than less, and I'll show you when I am marrying these up why that is. It's easier to cull extras out than it is to try and add more to it. Then I'm going to cut 2 slips of about 10 to a dozen of the orange. Now, just as I showed you when I made the matched wing of the green, by the way, I usually have like the pedestal on my tying bench or something like that. This case, I'm just going to put a piece of wood here. But I usually will have that. I'll use that, or the corner edge of my desk or something like that, the corner of my desk, because I'll go ahead and just set these, move this out of the way. I'll just set these right on the edge like that. So if I have to put any of these down, it's very easy for me to just come in and pick those up. But like I did the matched feather before, I took some off this side, flipped it over, matched up, took it off that side. I'm going to do the same process here. However, I'm going to specifically process the left feather, the left slip first and then the right. And the reason is this one coming out this way is going to be the left and this is going to be the right. And the reason for that is that if you imagine this is my married wing with my 3 different colors, if I process that one first, I can set that down. Then when I've processed the right and I have all of them together in my hand, it's simply a matter of picking that up, matching it together by the tip, and then you've got your matched up married wings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the orange here. I'm going to flip it over because this is going to be my left side. I'm going to peel this off first, and I'm going to set that down with the dull side up. This is also important, at least for me, because I always want to know how my feathers are sitting, so when I pick them up, I know which side that I'm working with. When I marry these up, I'm going to just put the tips together like that, and I can peel that right off. I can then gently tap that and get those put together. Then I can take the last color, flip it over, and put the tip right up on top and peel that off. Again, just gently tap those together so that all those hooks, those little barbules all hook together. They all match up. And now I have my left slip for my matched and married wings. Now you'll notice that the green here is a little wider. There's more than just 4 barbs in here. And that's fine because it's easier for me to come in here and take a couple of them out like this to get the right width than it is if I had 3 of them and I just cut one out and I try to add it in there. I would rather cut a little bit more, and it's easy just to take that out than try to have less and add to it. So there's my left side. Now, each of my feathers have the dull side up. So now to do the right, I know I have to flip this over. And then I take the right orange out. I set that aside. I flip this over. I match up the tips. Zip those together. And then I can take the green, flip it over, match up the tips, and pull that out. And notice all of these are now shiny side up. It just helps me organize, keeping that organized like that just helps me so that when I'm in the process and in the flow of tying these up, I know just where my feathers are, how they're oriented. It just helps the whole overall process. So I will stroke that out, zip all those together. And again, I have more green than I need on this. So I'll reach in with my bodkin. I'll cull a couple of those out. Now I have the right width. But as I said before, notice I've just finished the right slip. Now I can just leave that in my hand like so, pick up the left, match the tips, and press those together. And now at least I have it together, very easy for me to handle it. You'll notice the left's a little bit longer. That happens. Wet your fingers just a little bit, and you can actually slide those back and forth. And now I have them both pretty much the same length. The tips are evened up here. Now the last part of making this and processing this is my orange is too wide. You want the overall wing generally to be about the same width as the gap of the hook. But that's fine. I intentionally cut those out a little longer. And the reason, again, is I know I have to have 2 black and I have to have 4 of the white or the green. I may actually still have one more in there. Anyway, once I know I have those two, these, I can call those out to make the overall wing the gap of the hook. So it's much easier for me to reach in here and take out 4, 5, 3, whatever I need on both sides at the same time. Now I have my wing is the right width. I've got the tips lined up, and I am ready to tie that in on my hook and lash it down. So that's my process for marrying slips together and making matched and married wings. You may find a different process works a little bit better for you. There's lots of different videos out there, and there's lots of other people that have done some videos talking about this. But when I did the marten, that's pretty much how I did it. Had a black and a yellow, go through the same process. You get your right and your left, and you put them together and you tie them in. I hope this helps. Maybe these tips on processing your feathers or sorting them and then processing them and handling them while you're making these makes your time at the vise just a little bit more enjoyable. So until next time, just remember, it's fly tying. If you're not having fun, then you're doing it wrong.